Bitcoin is up 10% so far this month in August, and it looks like it's heading for new records. ETF inflows are rising. Spot ETF recorded just over the past 3 days from yesterday around 800 million in net inflows. That, of course, follows the inclusion of Bitcoin into 401k last week. It was an executive order attributed to Trump, of course. Last Thursday, he announced plans to democratize retirement plans, allowing these funds to invest in non-traditional assets such as gold, private equity, but also cryptocurrencies. So regulations are going to be reduced that impede 401k funds from investing in cryptocurrencies. However, this is expected to take like some 6 months from now or so. State Street and Vanguard, which are retirement fund managers, already offer crypto-based ETFs, right? But not for retirement funds, which is very important. So, just to put this in perspective, 401k retirement funds hold around $12.5 trillion in assets. Yes, you heard that right. $12.5 trillion in assets. And any portion of that going to crypto and Bitcoin could give the sector substantial upside. Now, apart from Bitcoin, of course, moving, Ethereum is also moving. Let's put them here next by next, just to get a bit more perspective, and we'll look at the technicals as well. But Ethereum is not close to record highs. Actually, it is around 10% away from record highs, which, given the volatility of the markets, it could even like break to new records like in a day. But what is more important here, guys, to mention is that we are finally moving towards levels that we haven't seen since 2021, the previous Altseason. Why is this important? It's important because the leg from down here all the way up has been impulsive so far. And it's important because BTC is also breaking to new highs. So the combination of these two provide credence to a potential alt season. Why? Because the typical cycle is Bitcoin moves to all-time highs first, Ethereum breaks to new all-time highs, which is very close, and then Sol, XRP, and other altcoins, the big names, are also popping to new records. And then, of course, an alt season follows. This is the typical cyclical behavior for cryptocurrencies. Now, all of this time, it has been just Bitcoin going up. Okay, and that has been a little bit of a surprise to a lot of the proponents of the industry, because everybody was expecting an alt season to come much earlier following the previous halving. Now, there is something that one would call concerns for BTC, but I would say that there are probably good signs coming towards. First of all, an important thing to take into account. If we look at the structure of BTC currently, the structure of BTC in the long term showed us a cup and handle pattern, guys. And measuring the distance from the bottom of the cup to the neckline in the one case brings us up to around the 123K, which was already done. In the other case, because we have a tilt to the upside on the right cup lip, it brings us up to around the 128, 29K. Let's call it 130K. Now, why is this interesting? This is interesting because we have RSI divergences. So we've had one divergence from there to there, and we also are having a second divergence from there to there, and it looks like we're going for a third one. Okay, all of these divergences, despite actually the divergence, we still went up. But this is the third time we're going to get a divergence, right? And this divergence, of course, let me just remind you, one there to there, and prices are actually now moving up. Okay, So the moment will go up, the RSI is going to come probably to around the 70 and likely stop. There is little move to the upside to reach new records, a new peak, and there is a lot of room to reach the previous peak on the RSI. So this is very likely going to create another divergence. This is good according to what I'm thinking, because if we remain in this territory, if actually BTC stalls, we want it to stall, then Ethereum could get more attention. And this is the typical reaction for an alt season. BTC moves up, it stops, and then the flows go into the altcoins. Many years back, two as alt seasons before, it used to be a case where BTC will go up and there will be a switch in flows, but that has changed over the years. And what happened is that new incoming flows going into altcoins, because the majority of Bitcoin flows currently we see come from ETFs for corporate clients, right? So with the Fed starting to look at the markets actually becoming a bit more dovish, I would say, not the Fed itself, but you have a replacement of Kluger with a more dovish FOMC member. That was a Trump pick. So also the latest NFP was a little bit of a problematic one. So what I want to see this divergence actually creating a little bit of a pause on BTC without that falling below the 112 level. If prices remain in this territory, then there is potential for upside for Ethereum. Okay, so that's the signal I'll be looking on BTC to understand what's going to happen with Ethereum. So when it comes to Ethereum, look at this. We are looking at a potential pennant here pattern in the longer term. Okay, and we have had a volatile retest of the descending trend line of that pennant. All right, over here, this is a very important level, and I would put in circle the 3900s and the 3300s. This is a very important area, as well, of course, as the previous low over here, the 4090 also. This level could turn into support and prices could continue higher. We're 10% away from the previous high. If we break the new high, there could be potential for an alt season. If we don't break the new high, we might also stall. It's very important to pay attention to the 90% of this leg to the downside, which is around the 460, let's call it 4500s, because once we enter this territory, then this opens the door up to the 1272. I would even say higher. I would want to go with 318. And I would also want to add the 105. I will explain why. And pay attention to all these numbers in the short to medium to short term, or medium to long term, I would say. Right, these could turn into a flat. That's why we are paying attention to the 105, which is just above the 5K. If we enter the territory above the 4500s, the next target will be the 50-50. The moment we do break the 50-50, that is going to reduce the chances of us getting a flat. Okay, and the flat though, an irregular flat at least, not normal, could get us up all the way to the 6K, just above the 6K, the 131.8. The potential will still be there to go all the way up, which is important. If we look at this with an even longer term perspective, guys, the measured move of the pennant pattern on the one hand from low to bottom, from low to top, would get us to the 100 would be right at the just below the 9K, a very, very important level, of course. And then we also need to take into account the 1618, which is a Fibonacci extension. Let's just do that one, 1.618. That brings us to the 725. Okay, that's on the one hand. Now the Fibonacci extension tool from the breakout, that tells us we've got the 5150, we've got the 6K, as well as the rest. Okay, so these levels are all very important. So in my mind, I want to see BTC stalling Ethereum breaking, Sol, XRP, and other coins follow, and then remain above the previous highs in order for us to see an alt season.